ॐ सहना भवतु नौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति। Chapter 2, Nature of God. Topic, some indicative definitions.
Some indicative definitions. To help seekers in their spiritual pursuit, Vedanta provides some indicative definitions to conceive, to an extent, the inconceivable Brahman, God. Ekam, one. Brahman, the Supreme God, is said to be one. There exists nothing but the one reality. The pluralistic phenomenon of the world is a superimposition upon Brahman. Yet Brahman remains the same. Just as the mind remains one, even as the pluralistic phenomenon of dream objects and beings arise from it. Advayam, non-dual. The definition of the reality being one suggests that something else exists beyond its boundary. Since nothing exists other than Brahman to define its boundary, it cannot be termed as one, hence said to be non-dual. Nirakara, formless. An object takes a form where there is something other than the material of the object beyond its borderline. If there is nothing other than the object to define its boundary, it can have no form. The all-pervading cannot have a form. Since Brahman alone exists, there is nothing other than Brahman to create its form, hence considered formless. Sarvagatam, all-pervading. Brahman alone exists, nothing else. It pervades everywhere. If not so, there would be a place it has not accessed that would restrict it, limit it. Since Brahman is limitless, infinite, it must be all-pervading. Nirguna, attributeless. Substances have properties, qualities, attributes. They are perishable. If attributes are given to Brahman, it would be reduced to a substance and rendered perishable. Since Brahman is not a perishable substance, it is attributeless. Aksharam, imperishable. Every object and being has a beginning and an end, birth and death. The terrestrial world is an expression of creation and destruction. But Brahman is transcendental, beyond the terrestrial, not subject to birth and death, hence imperishable. Aja, unborn. Brahman, referred to as Atman in beings, is not born when beings are born, nor does it die when beings die. It always was, is, and will ever be, with no beginning or end, hence considered unborn. Nitya, eternal. Eternal means beyond time. Time is the interval between two experiences, just as distance is the interval between 2 points. There can be no distance at a point. There has to be more than one point to conceive distance. Therefore, a minimum of 2 points is necessary to measure distance. Similarly, two experiences are required to measure time. There can be no concept of time at the first experience. With the second experience alone is time born. That perhaps explains why the unit of time is termed second. Time, therefore, arises with the second experience. But Brahman, being the source of all experiences, existed at the very first, hence said to be before time, trans-time, timeless, eternal. Nirvikara, changeless. Brahman, Atman, remains changeless in and through the changes occurring in the equipments it enlivens. The body, mind, and intellect change continuously. These changes are perceptible because of the presence of the changeless substratum, Atman, that supports them all. Nirmala, stainless. Stainless means pure, immaculate. A substance is pure when the material of the substance is not mixed with anything else. For example, a sample of gold is pure only when there is no material but gold in it. If other material is mixed with it, it becomes impure. Brahman is said to be ever pure since there exists nothing other than Brahman. There can be no contamination in Brahman, hence stainless. Anantam, infinite. Things and beings of the world have a beginning and an end. They are finite. They arise out of, exist in, and merge into Brahman. Brahman is the substratum upon which the worlds appear and disappear. It is beginningless, endless, infinite. Jnanam, knowledge. Brahman is absolute, pure knowledge. The knowing principle with which everything becomes known. People have the knowledge of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. Also, the knowledge of feeling and emotion, of thought and idea. These are all conditioned knowledge. Knowledge defined by perception, emotion, and thought. Whereas Brahman is knowledge undefined, unconditioned. None can possess knowledge of Brahman. It is knowledge per se, unrelated to anything. Anandam, bliss. The pleasures derived from objects and beings of the world are fleeting, ephemeral, whereas the bliss of self-realization is absolute, eternal. It is the ultimate goal of human evolution. The enlightened enjoys the uninterrupted supreme bliss. Turiyam, fourth. Turiyam means fourth, refers to the state of self-realization, the state of pure consciousness beyond the waking, dream, and deep sleep. These three states are conditioned by the gross, subtle, and causal bodies, respectively. When one detaches oneself from the three bodies, rises above their conditioning, one merges with the pure consciousness, reaches the fourth state, Turyam. Achintyam, inconceivable. Brahman is pure consciousness. It is the Supreme Self enlivening the intellect to conceive thoughts. It is the subject, not the object of conception. Hence, the intellect cannot reach Brahman. It is inconceivable.
So, previous week we saw that there is no word, there cannot be a word to describe Brahman. Having said there cannot be a word to describe Brahman, there are 20 words describing what Brahman is. And we understand that these 20 combined or individually are not the definitions of Brahman. They give you an idea. And importantly, these definitions are more used at the level of contemplation. Here we are just doing it at the level of the Shravana, but these definitions are used at the level of contemplation. So we'll just read through these definitions now. And these are not meant for a detailed, elaborate analysis. These are all meant for inspiration, not meant for analysis. And at this point of time, after a while, these definitions, we will get distracted and the mind will start wandering. Or we may fall off to sleep with all these definitions. And yet, the necessity of these definitions is because of it gives you an idea of what that Brahman is. In reflection, you see it as Brahman. In Nididhyasana, you see it as your own self. In Manana, you see it as attributes of Brahman. In Nididhyasana, what do? You say these are not attributes of Brahman. These are your attributes. When you say these are your attributes, these are the attributes of everybody. It's not unique only to you. It's not that you are Advayam and rest are all Dvayam. It's not that. So what it means is, first you understand it as definitions of Brahman, and then when you come to the contemplation, it's not Brahman, it is you. So a spiritual practitioner, when somebody asks, who are you? Don't say all this, but at least within yourself, you are supposed to say, who are you? Now, what are you supposed to say? Advayam, Nirakaram, Sarvagatam. This is what you are. Because whenever we talk about the definition of Brahman, it is not the definition of Brahman, it is defining who. It is defining who you are. That is your definition. So we try to understand these definitions from this perspective. Instead of trying to understand it as a definition of a third entity, these are the definitions of you. If you take it as the definitions of Brahman, it is all right. If you take it as your definitions, you will feel like laughing. You will feel like you will not feel like reading it. That's why it is supposed to be done in the contemplative state. When you reach the contemplative state, you are supposed to imbibe this. You are supposed to drill it in yourself. Whenever the thought of I arises, you are supposed to tell yourself, I am Ekam, Advayam, Nirakaram, Nirvikaram, etc. Whatever be it. And all these indicative definitions, Upanishad talks about it, Atmabodha talks about it, Viveka Chudamani talks about it, and he has picked a few. He didn't go into the complete list. If he goes into the complete list, that will be another book. This is on God part 2, it will come. So he has taken only a few meant for contemplation. So we'll go into the details now. And what you should remember is, whenever they talk about body, mind, and intellect, don't say it is talking about you. Whenever they talk about Brahman, say it's about you. That is spiritual growth. Very difficult to come to this point, but we should try. Whenever they talk about mind and intellect, don't get so excited about those things, because that is talking about that which you are not. And we get very excited hearing those things. That which we are not, we get very interested. That you are, you will not be interested. Vedanta says, get interested in that which you are and ignore that which you are not. What you are not? The body you are not, the mind you are not, the intellect you are not, and why waste time studying about that which you are not? No, sir, that is more practical. In practical life, that is work. That is better. That because what we will do with this Nirvikara, Nirakara, and all that, what we can do with that? Indicative definitions of Brahman, understand it as indicative definitions of your own self. Whenever we say Ekam, Brahman is Ekam, what you should tell yourself? I am Ekam. That's Nididhyasana. That's what Nididhyasana is all about. In Manana, you have done so much of analysis and etc. When you say, I am Ekam, you have no doubts. You are so convinced about what you are saying. That's why Manana is very important. So when you sit in Manana, or why we are not able to do this contemplation now, because so much of doubts are still there. And reflection clears those doubts. And what doubts does reflection clear? Reflection clears the doubts that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are not the intellect. Reflection can do that. Reflection can clear those doubts. But reflection cannot explain what Ekam, Advayam, Nirakaram, Nirvikaram and all that. Because there is no analysis here. This is a factual description of who you are, what you are. And you can't even say factual description, because factual description means you have to give Nama, Rupa, Guna, Karma, etc. Whatever these are, class. In order to define something, you need a few. And Brahman doesn't have any of that. Or anything that has those is not you. With this background, we'll go into the individual things. And in each and every definition, you can spend days together. Don't worry. In 15 minutes, we will finish all that one. We will not spend even an hour on this. We just, But each and every definition you can spend days together, weeks together. Because that much of Nididhyasanam can be done in those days. First, Ekam. Ekam means one. And the next definition is Advayam, non-two. The first one is Ekam. Ekam means one. God is one. It is not God is one, there is only God. Ekam means one. Doesn't mean there is only one God. Most interpret Ekam as there is only one God. It is not only one God. The moment you say there is only one God, there is a fallacy in that. So Vedanta comes and says, you can't say there is only one God, there is no one God, there is correct. Srikant, there is only God, nothing else. In that sense, Ekam. But what about this Nama Rupa that you see? What about all this that you see? Ekam. What about all this you see? Ekam. Just as the plurality of the dream is nothing but the mind. The plurality of the dream is nothing but the mind. You follow? Bhagavatam gives an example of this Ekam. Beautiful example they give. Lord Brahma, what he did, all these boys, all this cowherd community, no? So all these boys took the cows for grazing and all that. Brahma wanted to know the glory of Krishna. What Brahma did? He kidnapped everyone. He kidnapped the boys, the cows, everything. Lord Brahma kidnapped them and hid them. And in the evening, what happened? Everybody went back to their homes, respectively. How can the kidnapped people come back home? Krishna became all of them and went to their respective houses. And how they describe it is so beautiful description. Krishna became the boy, Krishna became the cow, Krishna became the well in the cow, Krishna became the rope, and Krishna became the lunchbox they carried. That is Ekam. It is just one. That's all. So Ekam means there exists nothing other than God. There exists nothing other than the reality. So the starting point of indicative definitions of Brahman is what? There is only one God. There is one God. No, there is only God. Ekam. The second definition is Advaya. The second definition is Advaya. We can't say in the definition. The second pointer is Advayam. Advayam means non-dual. Intellect, experiences, all happens in the medium of duality. All experiences, happen in the medium of duality. How do you say that? Because the very definition of experience is subject and object. The moment we say an experience, two. If you say God is an experience, God becomes the object and there is the subject experiencing God. Two, non-dual. It means there cannot be, there is no two things there. And predominantly they use the definition advayam more than ekam. Because intellect functions in the medium of duality, the pairs of opposites. Advayam means there is no pair, there is two, there is no two. Brahman and world, God and you, this is dual. Again I repeat, God and the world, God and you. So there are two things. Advayam means there is no God, there is no world. And Advayam is used more because Advayam is used in the sense of negation. All that the intellect knows is negated. Ekam is an assertion, Advayam is a negation. What is the negation? All that happens through the intellect needs two, minimum. Intellect cannot function without two. When you say intellect cannot function without two means it needs minimum two. It needs minimum two and then it can be the multiplication of two. Advayam means there is no, it cannot be, since there exists nothing other than Brahman, it is non-dual. If you say one, you can ask why not two, why not three? One indicates something that exists. One intellectually indicates there is something that existing. Advayam comes and says there is no. Advayam comes and says there is nothing like that, because one is an indication of a boundary, isn't it? Whenever you say one, it is an indication of a boundary. Advayam means no boundary, therefore said to be non-dual. The third one, nirakaraha. Nirakara, formless. A object takes to a form. Object means it has a form. Then only you can call it as object. Form means it is made up of a specific material. Then only it can have a form. So whenever we say form, what does it mean? Whenever we define something as an object, it has a form and a material, which we have seen already. Nama, Rupa, Guna, Karma. Name, form, attribute, action. We have seen that already. There are these things, Nama, Rupa, Guna, and Karma. When these things are Anything can be defined with these four because it has a four. If you can define these four, you can conceive the form. If you can define the four, the form can be conceived. Nirakaraha, formless, because it doesn't have any of these. The all-pervading cannot have a form. Form implies limitation, and anything all-pervading cannot have a form. In that sense, it is Nirakara. Next definition is Sarvagatam. It pervades everywhere. Sarvagatam means it's there in all directions. It's there everywhere. It means that. Sarvagatam, it's there everywhere. An object, because of the limitation, can never be all-pervading. An object, because of its limitation, can never be all-pervading. And anything that is all-pervading cannot have a form. Even if you have a huge form like Vishwarupa also, still it is a form. Only thing is magnified form. That's all. Magnification is more. That's all. Isn't it? Maybe 1,000,000 times magnified, maybe 100 million times magnified, but a form magnified. Sarvagatam means all-pervading. Anything that is all-pervading has no form. Next one, Nirgunaha. Nirguna. Substances have properties, qualities, attributes. It has a property, it has a quality, it has an attribute. And what is the intrinsic nature of guna? The intrinsic nature of a property, the intrinsic nature of a guna is that which is perishable. Guna by nature is property, by nature is perishable. If attributes are given to God, those attributes are perishable. That's why they give words like imperishable words they give. Infinite love, infinite kindness, infinite glory, infinite power. Because we understand our love has a limitation, that is unlimited. We understand that our power has your power has a limitation, no? Isn't it? Everything has power, and all powers are limited. So all powerful means it gives you both. Some of the attributes that you know about and wish for, they try to say God is infinitely, God has that in infinite thing. Again, it is inconceivable, because you cannot conceive of anything that is infinite. You just cannot conceive of it. Attributeless, nirgunaha. And then comes aksharam. We have seen that. Ksharam is perishable. Aksharam is imperishable. Perishable means beginning and an end. Imperishable means no beginning, no end. Beginning and an end is the cycle of creation and destruction. Between creation and destruction, there is it survives for a while, maintenance. So creation, existence, destruction. Creation, existence, destruction. Aksharam means Brahman is beyond the cycle. And please understand, whenever we say Brahman, I am repeating. You have to hear it as your own self. Your own self. Then you look at yourself. The body is Ksharam. The mind is Ksharam. The intellect is Ksharam. Because all this have a beginning and an end. And Aksharam means imperishable, meaning it doesn't have an end. Beyond the terrestrial, not subject to birth and death. Not perishable. Ajaha, unborn. The birth of the body is not the birth of consciousness. The death of the body is not the end of consciousness. In that sense, it is Ajaha, unborn. Too much of definitions. We'll take a small detour now. What is indicator means? Simple example. Clock is the indicator of time. The birth of the clock is not the birth of the time. Even though without clock, you can never know time. Birth of the clock is not birth of the time. The clock stops, time doesn't stop. The clock breaks, time doesn't break. And the clock is the indicator. Are you able to understand what is indicator means? Without this, you can never know what it is, but this and that has no connection. Chandrashaka Nyaya. I'm just giving another example for Chandrashaka Nyaya. That's all. A moon branch analogy. We feel it. So I have to say something different. No. A clock indicates time. You stop the clock, time doesn't stop. You speed up the clock, time doesn't get speeded up. You slow down the clock, time doesn't get slowed down. Though with clock alone you can understand the time, and the clock has no connection to time. Are you able to understand that? But sir, clock and time is one and the same. No, you stop the clock, time doesn't stop. No, you can reverse the clock and go back to 7:30. Time travel and all you can do. Yeah, you can sit and you can reverse the clock. You can reverse the clock, but time doesn't go back. Time doesn't get reversed, isn't it? You can accelerate the clock. Time doesn't get accelerated. So what is clock? Indicator of time, but has absolutely no connection in absolutely no connection in making you understand what time is. Correct? Without clock, you can never, without clock, you can never understand that. But then, if you know that, you know that time and the clock has no. In the school, in kindergarten, when you learn how to read time. Nowadays, we don't need to read time only because it's also digital. No, you have to read, So you will not say time stopped. When the clock stops, you will not say time stopped. The child believes stop the clock, time stops. Time doesn't stop. Why? Because it is an indicator but has absolutely no connection. And yet, without the clock, you can never get anywhere closer to. In that sense, these indicative definitions are clock and Brahman is time. Understand it like that. I'm also struggling to come up with some new thing, and then we'll go back to the definitions again. Because 7, 8 definitions itself, we feel like saying, let us go to the next. Let us go to the next chapter, sir. Indicator is that which points it out, and what it points out is not actually what it is. So whenever you hear about a definition of Brahman, indicative definitions, you hear it as it is defining about your own self, and these definitions are the correlation between clock and. What is the correlation between clock and time? There is a correlation, and yet there is no correlation. Are you able to follow? That's why it's called indicative definition. We have studied up to Ajaha, unborn. Sorry, Aksharam. We studied. Now coming back to the text. Every 10 minutes, we'll take a detour. Every 10 minutes, we will take a coffee break, tea break, and we will come back. Ajaha, unborn. Consciousness is not born when the body is born. Consciousness doesn't die when the body dies. All our conception of everything starts at birth, and we believe death is the end of everything. Here he says it is unborn. Unborn means can't die also. That which is born has to die. That which is born has to a question of time, that's all, isn't it? Old person will believe at least he has another 10-15 years. The young person will believe that they have 70-80 years. But nevertheless, there is a end. So unborn means no birth, means no death. Nityam, eternal. Another indicative definition. Nityam, eternal. Eternity is connected to time. Sarvagatam is related to the space. The world is of three: the time, the space, and the causation. World is made up of these three: time, space, causation. Time is that which makes you cognize experiences. Space is that where everything is occupied. Causation is the link, the chain, the continuous chain. So what is world? Time, space, causation. Time refers to the question of when. Time refers to the question of when. When were you born? The time. Where were you? Where are you? Where were you yesterday? Somebody may keep calling you and you have switched off the phone and they ask you, where were you? Your phone is space. Causation is the link. Brahman is beyond these three. Brahman is beyond time. Brahman is beyond space. Brahman is beyond causation. If Brahman is beyond this time, space, causation, you are beyond time, space, causation. Why? The body is subject to the time because there is the time in which the body is born. There is the time in which the body is going to die. The time of birth and the time of death. The mind also goes through the same condition. The intellect also has the same condition. Nitya means eternal, means beyond time. Please understand, time here doesn't mean the clock time. Time means that which helps you to cognize experiences. That which helps you to recognize an experience is because of the time. In that sense, we call it as time. Otherwise, because whenever we keep hearing time, 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 we always think as clock time. No, it's not the clock time. It's not the clock time. Because this time itself is very limited by nature, and it is that which continuously changing, not this time. Previously, we used to have a clock. Every week you have to key it in, no? Every week, 10 days, you have to key. And then 4th day, 5th day, it slows down. 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 7th day, 8th day, it will be 10 minutes. 10 minutes, slow. Again, you have to key in and adjust the thing. Now we have what is known as the perfect clock. What is the perfect clock? The atomic clock. Because I don't know, the nanosecond, the microsecond, I don't know, whatever it is. It is that. Right. Now, when we talk about time, we are not talking about time in that sense. Whenever we talk about time, what does time mean? That which helps you to cognize an experience. That is why he says, you require 2 experiences. The second experience itself is because it has moved in time. There is no time at the first experience. The experience may be longer, the experience may be shorter. Some classes, 1.5 hours looks like 1.5 minutes. Today's class, it's Yuga. Yeah, one Yuga it is. It is one Yuga. And not concluded, huh? It's still going to continue. Yeah, we have reached only halfway. We have not even finished it. One Yuga it is. Not that time. What is time? A time is that which helps you to recognize the flow of experiences. And Brahman doesn't fit into an experience like that because it is beyond time. That's why it's called Nitya, eternal. They will follow? In that sense, it is Nitya and eternal. Nirvikara. Vikara means modifications, changing. Nirvikara means that which will not go through any modification. What is Vikara? That which goes through modifications. What is modifications? What are the modifications? The 5 modifications: birth, growth, disease, decay, death. This is the Vikara. Vikarama irukuduna, it's constantly changing. Vikara doesn't mean ugly in Sanskrit. Nirvikara, meaning doesn't go through any changes. Now, what are the changes? The 5 fundamental changes of life. What are the 5 fundamental changes of life? Birth, growth, disease, decay, death. This is called Vikara. Brahman is Nirvikara. Nirvikara means it doesn't have any of this, free from all the modifications. A modification implies property, guna, etc. It cannot modify, it cannot go through change because it doesn't have any name, property, etc. Nirvikara, changeless. Also, from a relative angle, changes are noticed only in the background of a non-changing one. All changes are perceptible because of a changeless background. That changeless entity is called Brahman. That's another way of describing the word Vikara. So Nirvikara can be seen in 2 ways. One way is not going through modifications, not subject to. What is the Vikara of life? What is the Vikara of, what are the modifications of life? Birth, growth, disease, decay, death. These Vikaras do not apply here. These Vikaras do not apply here means there is no these 5 modifications. Another way of seeing it is you know that the body is changing continuously. Okay, at least you can read and understand that your body is changing continuously. Your mind is changing continuously. Your intellect is changing continuously. And changes can be noticed only in the backdrop of something that is unchanging. And that unchanging is Nirvikara, free from modifications. Nirvikara. Then comes Nirmala. Mala means dirt. Nirmala means without dirt. Stainless. Steel and stainless steel. What is the difference? There is thing called steel, and then there is something called stainless steel. What is the difference? Steel goes through, gets rusty. Now it accumulates dirt. Stainless means it doesn't accumulate any dirt. Nirmala, stainless it is. Don't say Brahman is stainless steel. Yeah, not in that sense. What it means is it doesn't have any impurity. What is the impurity? What is the impurity that it doesn't have? It doesn't have the impurity of ignorance. What is the impurity? Doesn't have the impurity of ignorance. That's why Brahman is all-knowing also. He's all-knower because he is Nirmala, no? So he doesn't have the impurity of ignorance. Pure means the presence of something else isn't there. Pure means there is no mixture. Impure means mixture. What is the example that he gives here? A sample of gold is pure only when there is no material other than gold in it. Impure gold means there is gold, and along with gold there is, I don't know what they add with gold. I don't know, copper. Let us say copper. Pure copper means it can't have gold either way. Pure gold means it can't have copper. Pure copper means it can't have gold. Nirmala, stainless it is. It's not impure. It is pure. Impurity, dirt is of ignorance. All dirt arises because of ignorance. In fact, ignorance is dirt. That's all. Ignorance is dirt. That's how the Shastra says. What is the mala? Ignorance. And Brahman doesn't have that dirt at all. In that sense, Brahman is stainless. If Brahman doesn't have the dirt of ignorance, means you are not. What does it mean? You are not ignorant. Sir, you have said something correct, because I know I am not ignorant. I am the wisest one. Okay. Others are ignorant. I know. Not in that sense. Not in that sense of knowing, not knowing. The dirt of ignorance. Contamination. There cannot be any contamination. For what is the other thing to come and contaminate it? To contaminate, something else has to come and mix with it. No, that is why the world is called Mishram. World is called mixture, contaminated. Pure world. Even in dreams, you can't have a pure world, huh? Because even to recognize the purity, you need an impurity, no? Only in comparing and contrasting with an impure thing, you can call this as pure. If there is only one thing where there is no other thing to come and mix with it, how can it be called impure? Therefore, there is no contamination, hence stainless. Then Anantam, infinite. Anything all pervading has to be infinite. Jnanam, knowledge. Jnanam means knowledge. It is not the knowledge of something, it is that which makes you capable of knowing. Knowledge means always knowledge of something. When we say, do you have knowledge? The question is, do you have knowledge? You have to ask, of what? Isn't it? You can't simply say, do you have knowledge? You can't say, yes, I have knowledge. You have to ask, of what? Of science, of politics, of Tokyo Olympics. Knowledge of what? So here, when we say jnanam, it is not the knowledge of, but the very capacity to know, the knowing principle. That is called as jnanam, knowledge. Knowledge defined by perception, emotion, and thought are conditioned knowledges. Knowledge defined by perception, emotion, and thought are conditioned knowledges. They are conditioned by perception, conditioned by emotion, conditioned by thought. So here when we say jnanam, it is the knowing principle with which everything becomes known. The knowing principle with which everything becomes known. That is knowledge. You can only conceive of conditioned knowledge. You can never have knowledge of the knowing principle. It is a bit, all these are a bit technical. That's why I'm not going so detailed into it. As I said in the beginning, you can spend days together, weeks together with each and every one thing. We are finishing it off very, very quickly. So what is that knowing? You can never have knowledge of the knowing principle. Then who's knowing that? What is knowing that? It becomes a cycle. How can you have knowledge of the knowing principle? The moment you say, I have knowledge of the knowing principle, who's saying that? Let us finish this. Yeah. Too much for today. Sample. This is what say. I always believe, when people say I'm interested in Vedanta and all that, I always think, how can anybody get interested in Vedanta? Because to get interested in Vedanta means is to get inspired by Ekam, Nirvikaram, Nirakaram, Anantam, Nityam, Nirmalam. These are all the things that is Vedanta. She thinks, sir, you never said this is Vedanta. We thought Vedanta means something else. And we came in, and now you are saying something very, very, very different. Jnanam. Knowledge that is undefined, knowledge that is unconditioned. You can never know that. In that sense, it is jnana, knowledge. Anandam, bliss. Sukha, dukkha, ananda. Sukha is pleasure, dukkha is pain. The intensity of the pleasure is related to the intensity of the dukkha. If you are really jumping with joy, means what? Not having it cause to so much of pain, then only you can jump. Are you able to follow? So the intensity of happiness is directly related to the intensity of pain. That's why it's called sukha dukkha. And the third entity beyond sukha and dukkha is bliss, ananda. And sukha and dukkha is of the world. Objects and beings has the potential to give you either sukha or dukkha. They cannot give you ananda. உங்க கிளாஸ்ல ஆனந்தமா இருந்தது சார்னா that is not ஆனந்தம். Yeah. சுகம். That's all. இன்னைக்கு class, today's class was full of dukkha. Last week's class was full of ananda and today's class is full of dukkha. That is sukha dukkha. It can't be ananda. For ananda cannot come from any. Ananda cannot come from object or being. Sukha dukkha can come. And what is your intrinsic nature? What is your true nature? Bliss. This anandam. That is why how much ever pleasures you derive from objects and beings, you still can't be satisfied with that. Because sukha dukkha, sukha cannot satisfy you. Only anandam can satisfy you. Why only anandam can satisfy you? Why anandam only can satisfy you? Because you are that already. Till you get that, you can never be satisfied. Till you get that, you can never be satisfied. Therefore, in that sense, anandam, the ultimate goal of human evolution. Anandam, the bliss. Second is the sukha and dukkha. You get the sukha and you get dukkha. Now, the sukha and dukkha, what happens to the sukha and dukkha? Even if you have sukha, there is a pain associated with that sukham. What is the pain that is associated with sukham? What is the pain that is associated with sukham? Diminishing nature. Very soon you will lose it. Anandam is not in contrast with the dukkham. Anandam doesn't diminish. Are you able to follow? Wherever you get a worldly happiness, along with it comes what? That's why we always say, happy moments, time should freeze, no? Okay, if it freezes, how nice, how nice it will be, sir. Isn't it? You feel like that, no, sometimes. How nice it will be if it is just, and you are in that, you cannot be in that way, because you know that it will go away. Even this shall pass away. The worst of thing comes to pass. The best of thing comes to pass. Therefore, in every sukha, there is an element of pain. Anandam means what? A state of bliss that is not dependent on sorrow. A bliss that doesn't precondition the existence of sorrow. That is bliss. Worldly happiness has this condition, precondition. What is the precondition? For you to recognize happiness, you need to be agitated before that. Then only you can recognize happiness. If not, you will not recognize it. That's why happiness in the world is defined as cessation of agitations. Happiness of the world is defined as the cessation of it is just agitations, quietening. Anandam is completely different from that. Then comes Turyam, the fourth. Turyam means the fourth. Please understand, Turyam is not mathematical fourth. Because if you say Turyam, then if you say Turiya, fourth means then there can be a fifth, then there can be a sixth, then there can be a seventh. One of the person asked, if there is a fourth, sir, but what guarantee is there that there is no fifth? Because you have missed the point. It's not the mathematical fourth. It is not the mathematical fourth. Then what does Turyam means? You know of the three. What is the three? The waking, dream, deep sleep. That is above this three, beyond the three, the fourth. In that sense, the fourth. Not the mathematical fourth. Because mathematical four, definitely there has to be a mathematical 5. Now it's not that mathematical 4. Then what does Turyam means? The fourth means the fourth state of consciousness. It's an indicative way of saying. Don't take it literally. Because we say fourth state of consciousness, there has to be a fifth state then. Bible says 6 states of consciousness. Quran says 7 states of consciousness. Somebody will come and say layers of consciousness. All that you know of is of the 3 states. What are the 3 states? Jagra, Swapna, Sushupti. Waking, dream, deep sleep. Waking, dream, deep sleep. Waking, dream, deep sleep. This is something beyond that 3. In that sense, symbolically called as fourth. It is like saying the connection between time and indicator. Connection between time and clock. There is the time, there is the clock. Fourth. The last one. Achintyam. Inconceivable. All these gives you some way intellectual, you get some intellectual concept here and there, and all put together you may have developed a notion of what Brahman is. Achintyam says inconceivable. Chinta, Chetana, thinking. Conceivable. Achintyam, inconceivable. So, what is the definition of Brahman? Brahman is that which can't be defined, sir. That which can't be defined, you understand it as definition. That is the fallacy. Achintyam says you can't even say that. What is the definition of God? What is the definition of Brahman? Kenopanishad says it. Naham manyeshu vedeti, nona vedeti vedacha, donas tatveda tatveda, nona vedeti vedacha, yasyamatam tasyamatam, matam tasyana vedasaha, avijñātam vijānatam, vijñātam abhijānatam. Kenopanishad. What does it mean? We do not know it. Not that we do not know it. We do not know how to communicate it. Not that we do not know how to communicate it, we communicate it. Not that you cannot understand it. You feel like saying, make up your mind and clearly say whether it can be known or not known. Or nothing about Brahman can be told. When nothing about Brahman can be told, means nothing about you can be told. Why nothing about you can be told? Because Tvam Asi, you are that. If nothing can be told about Brahman, it means nothing can be told about you. But then we are talking, no sir, you have a body, you have a mind, you have an intellect, and strengthen your intellect. And with that strong intellect, you will be able to manage your mind and steer your life. And what happens? Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam. And how much ever you steer your life, sorrow. Yeah. You have a strong intellect. But arthritis pain comes, what will you do? Yeah, you have to, you have a pain. Body and all is very fit. Even at 95, you can do forward bend, backward bend, chakrasana and all. You can do it at 95 also. But then something else is so disturbing, agitating. So anything of you in the sense of body, mind and intellect is not you. Then who are you? Brahman. I am that. Old Testament. I am that I am. I am so and so, na, that so and so is not you. Just I am. That is inconceivable. In that sense, it is inconceivable. With this, we conclude the indicative definitions of Brahman and chapter 2. Next week, we continue with chapter 3, the manifest and the unmanifest. One of the important topics where we talk about the manifest as in the gunas, the manifest as in gods, the gods and the God, manifest and unmanifest as in the symbolism, how the inconceivable God, the inconceivable nature, material is given for manana, reflection. We said all this is for contemplation. Now, to get to the state of contemplation, you need to do a lot of analytical study. So from now on, there will be a lot. It's not right through, it is analytical study only. Here and there, bits and pieces of contemplation will come. And now we go back to the analytical. What is analytical study? Chapter 3, the manifest and unmanifest. This is chapter 3. We start from the next class. கண்டிப்பா இன்னைக்கு ஒன்றும் இருக்காது. இல்ல வெங்கட், நீங்க முடிச்சா போறோம் சார். we are waiting for you to we are waiting to finish. இதன் கேள்விலாம் ஒண்ணுமே வராது இதுல. What is there to ask from all this? Nothing, no, Venkat? Yeah. Thank you. Anyway, we'll have only these topics, sir. Nothing else we will talk. We'll continue next week.